Welcome to Escapists Anonymous, the fantasy fiction book club. I'm Sam.
And I'm Dan.
In this episode, we're weaving together the threads of chapters 15 to 28 of Elizabeth Lim's Six Crimson Cranes. There's going to be angry dragons, assassins, wolf attacks, persimmons, and enough spoilers to cover a large tapestry. So let's join Shiori within the frozen walls of Fort Iroh as she tries to unravel the strands of a mysterious plot that stretches the length of her father's empire. Well, here we go. Halfway through the book, well, over halfway through the book now, and things are getting real spicy.
Yeah, it's kind of changed pace. I've enjoyed it, I think.
It's amped up the enjoyment, has it?
Yeah, I feel like it's slowed down and enabled us to get to know the characters a bit more, or the main, at least our main character.
There's been a lot of good character development scenes in this, with some characters that I wasn't expecting. Well, one that I did guess, totally called it with Takkan.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
once again.
We're getting carried away with ourselves. Dan, this week, plot recap, go.
Plot recap, here we go. Okay, so spoiler alert, if you haven't read up to the end of chapter 28, then stop now, read, and then rejoin us. But we left Shiori on the way to Mount Ryuma. On Mount Ryuma, Shiori collects the starstroke for the dragon net by hand, causing her agony as she grips the flaming nettled plant. While there, Seiryu appears and tells her that she must leave before the Dragon King realizes she's there. She tries to tell him about Reikama and the curse, but there's not time to explain everything. It's too late. The Dragon King is onto her, and he chases her as her brothers come to fly her away. Realizing they can't outrun him, Shiori gambles on explaining to him why she needs the starstroke, that Reikama has a dragon pearl, and she plans to take it from her. She thinks the Dragon King has accepted this, but then he tries to drag her under the water. Fortunately, she survives. When they get back, Shiori figures out what she needs to do to make the dragon net, but realizes that it will take her a very long time. After her brothers head off on a mission to find Reikama's real name without Shiori, she ignores their instructions not to leave the cave and goes out to try to meet Seiryu at the river. Seiryu never arrives, but a snake appears and warns Shiori on Reikama's behalf not to interfere with the curse, and that there are things in motion that Shiori doesn't understand. In a panic, Shiori runs and bumps into a group of sentinels in the forest, including the horrible one she thought was her betrothed, Takkan. Except she finds out that Takkan was in fact the nice sentinel, and that this sentinel is called Hasage. Upon finding Takkan's dagger and trinket, the sentinels knock her out and take her to Castle Bushion, where she discovers that the real Takkan is missing. After Lady Bushion believes that Shiori has nothing to do with it, she ends up being allowed to work in the kitchens there, but an influential guest, Zirina, ensures that she ends up sleeping in the rat-infested cellar. Shiori uses the privacy to continue to work on the starstroke at night. Takkan returns, gravely injured and pursued by assassins. Shiori, having planned to use the commotion as an opportunity to escape back to her brothers, ends up saving his life, fighting off an assassin and stitching up his wound. After days of uncertainty about Takkan's chances of survival, during which time Seiryu appears to Shiori in a water trough and tells her he has made contact with her brothers and that the snake-like form Reikama took in the forest may be her true form, Takkan begins to recover after eating Shiori's soup. He declares that she will thereafter be his guest and have a room in the castle, although she continues to sneak out to the cellar at night to work on the starstroke. While staying in the castle, Shiori grows closer to Takkan and his little sister, Megari. But Lady Bushion and Zirina, who just so happens to own a weaving loom, continue to remind her to know her place. One day, after sneaking into the forest outside the fortress with Megari, where they meet Takkan, they are attacked by wolves, but they only seem to be interested in Takkan. Shiori notices a wolf wearing a golden bracelet that seems to be coordinating the attack. When she attacks this wolf, they all retreat. Takkan believes that Lord Yuji may be behind the attack, as he is known to have an enchanter called the Wolf working for him. There is a mysterious murder in the castle grounds. A sentinel is found dead with signs that the Four Breaths poison was used. Shiori and Takkan believe that the culprit may not yet have fled, and so Takkan orders that the fortress be locked down. Shiori has a dream where she unlocks a childhood memory of Reikama saying that her snakes won't bite her because she is one of them. And Shiori, having discovered that Zirina has been spending her nights in Hasage's room, sneaks in and begins using her loom to make the dragon net while Kiki keeps a lookout. Okay, we made it through the recap. What are your overriding thoughts and feelings on the section that we've just read?
Last episode, where I was making the case that Raikama, there's more to her, there's reasons beyond it. Well, I think I'm right because of what that snake said, even though, we shouldn't always trust snakes. But also, Zirina, now I think she's just plain wrong. So sympathetic to Raikama, but Zirina, I don't like her. And she's been a real good antagonist for this section of the book.
So Zirina's my main question mark for this whole section, but I'm not sure that she's as simple as just a nasty antagonist. There's some weird, suspicious stuff around her as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think Shiori's on point where she's saying she's an imposter because she's trying to hide her appearance, right? When she flings back the curtains and Zirina brings up the fan to cover her face.
Yeah.
And she's always got the umbrella when she's outside. Clearly, direct sunlight would reveal who she really is.
Yeah. Or she's a vampire. No. Hold on.
She's no wrong theories here, Dan.
I mean, all of my theories so far in our 10 episodes to date have been wrong theories, but we're going to stay open-minded.
I want to keep encouraging you. So
I don't get disheartened.
Yeah, otherwise you won't say them anymore. Do you think she's an enchanter and her appearance has been warped as well? Because Lady Bouchan, is she enchanted by Zirina? She seems so forgiving of how rude she is to her kids and always seems to side with her.
Yeah, there is some weird stuff going on there. And I wasn't sure whether it was some kind of sorcery. I like the fact that the word ensorcelled has been used multiple times in this section of the book as well. That's just a side note there.
It's a good word.
There are multiple things. I think it's really strange that she's been weaving this golden thread stuff for Reikama. And I wondered whether she's being granted this place in Castle Bushion as an imposter, but she still seems to have responsibilities to Raikama or something.
Yeah. Is there a network of people? Is Raikama merely one of the more prominent people within this conspiracy? Because we get the association with Lord Yuji. Is he potentially working with Raikama? Because he's got the wolf, the enchanter who's working for him, and the blurb on the book, it kind of gives away a bit too much, and we're kind of told there's a larger conspiracy going on.
Yeah.
So all I'm doing is trying to just pull everything together and be like, is this conspiracy? Is this conspiracy? What's conspiracy? So, yeah, I feel like Raikama might have even have put her there, but also because the gold thread seems unrelated. Like the gold thread, she didn't have to come to this place in order to weave the golden thread. She's here to keep an eye on something in the castle. Is it because she has an agent in every single castle and she has them all doing these additional tasks? Is it something to do with Takkan, or because she knows that Shiori was going to end up here, she wanted someone inside the castle ready to go in case she needed her?
Well, Takkan seems to be this target, doesn't he? Like the fact that when the wolves attacked, they only attacked him. They ignored Shiori altogether. So I think that's possibly a more likely explanation than anything else. But yeah, I'm sort of puzzled by her. There's stuff that's been drawn to our attention with Megari getting ill and Zirina having something to do with that in the kitchen and sort of making her tea that supposedly is an antidote. But do we believe that that's what's happening?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that element of it, actually, because I remember reading at the time when she was like, I will also prepare the soup for Takkan. And I was like, oh, so she's just going to be starting poisoning both the kids. Isn't they just trying to wipe out all of the next generation of the families in the same way that the brothers and Shiori have all been got rid of.
Yeah, I think your theory on sunlight revealing her true nature is probably spot on. I think the fact that she's got this portrait of herself in the room, it's like a constant reference for her to make sure that she looks right all the time.
But yeah, I think because this story has to get back to Gindara, the brothers will be back to human and Raikama will be confronted by the end of this novel. I feel like there's not long left here with Takkan. So I feel like when we pick up the next bit, there's not long left for Zirina. We're going to be having her being confronted. It's all going to come to a head because Shiori will probably like be hurriedly weaving the Starstroke thread, and then it's all going to come to a head. Takkan's going to help Shiori get back down to the castle or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting whether she just has to leave it all behind, because at the moment, like we said in the last episode, the curse is really well put together in a way that unless Takkan just makes a decision to say, I'm going to come with you or something, she knows that he's on the right track with her and her brothers being ensorcelled away. But there's also this really interesting, or I thought was fun and interesting because it's so fairy tale. There's this Cinderella type thing with her slipper, isn't there?
Yeah.
Where I wonder whether that's going to be some part to play in it, where it's like the thing that reveals. Yeah.
Oh.
Or does she still have her other slipper?
No, must not. Otherwise, she would just surely point at me like, I've got the other one. Just be like,
yeah. I was trying to figure out how that might come to play a part in it, because it keeps being mentioned just every now and again.
Yeah, you wouldn't have it mentioned so many times for it not to be the case. But I think carrying on with the fairy tale stuff that I think is really interesting is like she's going through all of these trials and her appearance has been warped to hide her aristocratic bearing, her delicate hands from a very gentle life. All of this is being lost. And I kind of wonder whether there'll be that moment at the end. It was like, and the bowl comes off, and of course your hands are pretty again, like you never worked a day in your life, or whether she'll retain the scars. Because I feel like there's something like Beauty and the Beast, where he's made hideous and then he has to learn humility. So there's a different lesson to be learned by someone having their appearance warped, which I think is quite interesting. Even really interestingly, an old French medieval poem to do with this very kind of thing. It's called Silence. And it's about this princess who's amazingly good at being like the best knight, the best archer, the best fighter, the best rider. And everyone's just like, wow, it's like she's a man or something. And at the end of it, Merlin turns up and he just goes, well, for all of your hard work, for being the best possible man, I will make you the most beautiful woman ever, and you will never speak again. And I can see parallels with this. She is silenced, but she is still undergoing these trials. So I wonder what's going to happen at the end in terms of what lessons are learned.
Yeah. I guess it'd be funny if when she can speak again, Takkan's like, oh my God, you're so annoying.
But this is what I'm really enjoying about Shiori. She's learning so much. There's so much character growth going on, particularly through this bit of it. You know, like, I do wonder about the message behind it. But, you know, when she's getting too close to her brothers, she feels like it's actually a good idea to have left because she was so close to letting her emotions cause her to speak or laugh or anything. And she's constantly trying to just have this detachment from any kind of emotional link that might cause her to be weakened.
Yeah.
Is this message saying, is it Buddhist or Confucian, this idea of not having these earthly links, not letting these emotional things tie you down because they are your weakness? Or is it that she's going to learn, well, it's actually still important to have these?
Yeah, I think the latter is what I'm taking from it, this sort of human nature element of finding connections with people and enjoying moments. And the curse is this thing that forces or reminds her that just one slip, one moment where she enjoys something too much can be the death of one of her brothers.
But, you know, she's denied power through words. She can't speak. But will she find a new power that doesn't require her to use words? Will she be able to use the magic eventually without even speaking it?
Yeah, that would be interesting because I think we assume that until Seiryu can return from his father's kingdom under the water, that she's not going to be able to figure out magic stuff again.
Yeah, it hobbles her power, but we're seeing so much of her character growth is in spite of that. You know, she's learning to be this really hardened person. She's gaining new strengths. So I feel like for her to be able to defeat Raikama by being able to speak, while of course it feels like an inevitable conclusion to some of the story, it would also undermine the fact that she's gained so much power without having to use words.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I have really enjoyed it slowing down and staying put in Fort Iroh. I think the first third of the book that we read, it almost felt like it was moving so fast that you couldn't get to know even Shiori. We only really had a sense of her, and I think we know her much better now. I think I said in the last episode that she feels like a little bit of a spoiled, rich princess. I think we've moved on from that now.
Megari's character almost feels like she's placed there to contrast with Shiori in her current state. Megari is who Shiori was just before the start of the story. This immature, naive princess with a good heart, but really, really not ready for the world.
Yeah, live in the moment and grasp onto everything that's happening right now.
Let's go out to this beautiful forest, even though there might be wolves.
A few days ago, my brother literally rode through the gates on the verge of death, being pursued by assassins, but off we go.
Can't let that stop us having fun in a forest. But that scene, you're talking about the moments where it's slowed down and we get a chance to enjoy the characters. I really like that whole stretch. So, you've had the storm and the viewing of the mountain with the rabbit ears. It's all really nice. And then they go out and there's this forest glade where everything's really peaceful. And you just have Shiori, Takkan, and Megari just singing and playing music and enjoying each other. And the only criticism I have of it is really weird. I doubt this came across in the audiobook, but throughout the book there's a little scene break and they put it in there with a little swirl of wind or a thread in between sections. And there's her going, I love this music, I wish it could last forever. Little scene break. It's like, then the wolves arrived. And I was just like, it really threw me off because I was like, that's a real smash cut, screeching left turn. And I feel like there was a better way to tie those two bits together without just going, and then wolves arrived.
Yeah, that was very sudden, actually, wasn't it? And then wolves arrived. And the fight didn't really last very long either, did it? But I think you said in the previous episode about kind of some of the things happened very quickly and without adequate explanation. And I think there have probably been a couple of examples. I think the attack with the wolves, I think the thing with the Dragon King, again, all happened like very quickly, and we might have liked a little bit more, especially the Dragon King one. I didn't get a huge sense of what the Dragon King was like from that interaction.
I think similar to when you see Raikama's full power before she sends Shiori away, it's like, look at the might of this huge character that we're going to deal with later in the book or in another novel. And that's what you get. You get a mysterious glimpse and you're like awed by their power without having to really need to development. But I agree with you. You don't really get much of a chat with him. There's no back and forth to understand where he stands on this. You have to have it all relayed through Seiryu in a later conversation. And I feel moving some of that back into that scene probably could have helped and just get us to understand the dragons. Because other than Seiryu, they are a bit of a cipher. They're just like, oh, this is what dragons are.
I think there was a thing that stuck in my head where it almost talks about his eyebrows furrowing or something like that. I was like, oh, okay, so he's got eyebrows.
Yeah. Give us a bit more of a description of him.
Like I want scale, I want ferocity, and how does it feel? And just what is the King of the Dragons like? Maybe it's just not an important concept in the book, but I had this feeling up until now that the King of the Dragons was going to be something somewhere down the line that had a significant influence on where the story goes.
They're going to be big. It's going to be a big thing. And I feel like Elizabeth Lim is really delaying us getting to know more beyond the rumor. Because we keep hearing again, like, oh, well, dragons are like this. The brothers keep going on about how they don't like dragons. She shouldn't go and talk to Seiryu, all this kind of stuff. But, we do get a sense of the dragons almost seem to be separate from the gods. They're not under the gods. They're a power unto themselves. So we kind of understanding where they sit in the cosmology of the world.
Yeah.
The gods had to come to them to ask them to help remove magic from Kiata. So that shows how incredibly powerful they are.
I think it's just one of the things about having a first-person narrator as your storyteller is that if it's being told from Shiori's perspective, then I think we could have got more in terms of what she saw and what that was like. And I get the whole trying to keep it more of a mystery until later on, but ultimately our narrator has seen it with her own eyes.
Yeah.
And so there's an imperative there to explain to the reader what she's seeing. So I think if it was told in the third person, you could justify holding it back from the reader. But I think telling it in the first person and then not including some of the details that Shiori's experienced in that exact moment that she is telling us about is a bit, I don't know whether it's deliberate or whether it's remiss.
Is there an editorial choice going on there? They wanted to keep the action scenes punchy but short, because whenever we have any sort of action, it does seem to be very brief. Or is it because of the first person perspective, it is more kind of, she's obsessed with this young man who she finds so interesting, so we get more description of that. And like a teenager, when something cool happens, you're like, well, what happened? You're like, I don't know, it was sick. It was just like really badass. And you're like, and more? They're like, yeah, it was just wicked. You're like,
it was just a massive dragon.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Just that.
What was it like? Massive. Eyebrows. That's it.
That's all I can tell you.
That's all I remember. But the other character that I want to ask your opinion on, Hasage.
Oh, yeah.
Do we trust him? Do we think he's got good or bad intentions? Because I know we think he's a bit of an asshole. And we now know that Zirina's been spending her nights in his room.
Yeah, is this plotting, sex, or both?
Yeah, so he's very forthright with Takkan, which makes me kind of trust him more and think, well, he's at least out there as a sort of asshole who is just open about it and says what he thinks. But I think Shiori's not sure what to make of him.
I think the characterization I've picked up on is that he's just a really blunt object. There's not much depth to him. He's angry, he's prejudiced, and he's hateful. And so, yeah, you know exactly what he's thinking. So in terms of treachery coming from him, you can see it a mile off. And I think that's why if Zirina is plotting with him, she's like, there's an ally right there. There's someone I can work with. He's resentful of Takkan. So there's definitely motive there. And I don't think there's much more to him beyond that. I think we saw the true measure of him when they were up on the island. He didn't have to pretend when it was just him. He was just an angry, horrible, spiteful person. So I think I can see that him and Zirina, there's going to be some kind of coup within the castle. He's definitely plotting something with Zirina, and that's going to come out real soon.
Yeah. So do you think then that they are behind the Four Breaths poison murder, or do you have any other theories on that?
I was going to ask you that.
My first thought was that she dismissed Zirina based on the search of the room far too quickly, like just because she didn't find anything in the 25 seconds that she looked in her room.
She just went, is the gold dye poison? Nah, that's the only thing it could be.
It's irrefutable evidence of her innocence. Yeah, so I think it still could be Zirina, but the other person that I've got in mind is Pao, who hasn't given much away in terms of character, but is always around and seems to get a noticeable amount of description in terms of what his reactions are to things from Shiori. So I've got my eye on him.
Because we have to ask ourselves, who were they trying to kidnap? Because the implication was that the Four Breaths was administered to Oryu because he stumbled across it by accident and they just needed him out of the way. They didn't want it being discovered. So I think it could be Zirina, but she's working with Hasagi and he's the one who's got it. Because he works with Oryu, so he's one of the people most likely to be working alongside him. So if someone's going to discover it, it's probably another Sentinel.
So the other person that I've got in my head for it is the head chef, Chiroam, who I guess might have access to lots of people. It seems like the Sentinels just pop into the kitchen all the time.
Trying to get monkey cakes.
Trying to get monkey cakes. But I think obviously the other question then is, who were they trying to poison, if not the Sentinel that ended up dead?
Is it Takkan or Magari? Those are my two. Like, if we're seeing this repeated thing of the children of the aristocracy are the ones being taken, or is it, for when they need to take Shiori somewhere else? I'm a bit unsure about where that's going. Chiron, I don't think he's bad because he's like the one person from the servant class who actually shows any kind of like towards Shiori. He's the one who's been
But is that
training.
because he hates everyone else?
But I like where you're taking this because for me, as I'm reading it, I just think it's Zirina and Hasigi just working together, and everyone else is just a bit blind to that because, like, well, of course, Zirina wouldn't do it because she's so devout, blah, blah, blah. And Hasigi is a sentinel. He's an upstanding member of the aristocracy. Maybe he wouldn't do it. And we're just like, come on, just catch on, guys. But maybe we have stumbled across a bit more of a murder mystery, and there is going to be a bit of a revelation for this section of the plot. I'm intrigued by where that could go.
I think you're right. I'd forgotten about Zirina. That's the other suspicious thing, isn't it? Her constantly going off to pray.
Even though she couldn't possibly have made it.
Yeah. Polyjuice potion, we think.
Exactly. Only lasts a certain amount of time.
But yeah, it's strange because you would think that she's had plenty of opportunity if she did want to poison Takkan. I think she supposedly re-stitched up his wounds after Shiori had sewed up the wounds in the first place. There's been lots of opportunities for her.
Yes, she has access. And she was trying to feed him, but he kept sending it away, I guess. I don't know. I like that there's still a mystery here. Yeah. But we've got certain little threads that we're trying to pull together. Speaking of which, the theme of threads is so prevalent throughout this entire book so far. Like, it's a real thing. Because there's the apology tapestry that she did, and her magic took the form of a golden thread, like in that one little bit where she does it. There's the sash, which broke down into golden threads. There's Zirina weaving golden threads. Shiori has to weave a net out of threads. And then you've got that more metaphorical element that Takkan talks about, this idea that everyone's tied together with threads. And Emurien, the goddess, who assigned cranes to be the ones to spread these threads to try everyone's fates together. And I think while some of them are a bit more obvious than others, I like the fact that we have this persistent theme throughout the novel, and it really gives it a kind of a nice cohesion. Some of the ways that she ties it in are really nice, like when Takkan's talking about, after having told that, he tries to tie the two threads together to try and demonstrate, like, implying these are our fates tied together into this circle. This is what happens when people fall in love. But then you've got the fact that it gets swept away by the wind. And also they talk about the cranes carrying people's fates to them, and cranes currently can't approach for Iroh because of the magic. So it's almost saying, well, Shiori's, Takkan's fates, they're all undecided because their fates can't yet be tied together, and it's being prevented.
Yeah, I was a bit suspicious about that moment where the thread blew away. I wondered whether there was something more sinister at play there, because it blows away when she goes to take it from him, and then she goes to pick it up from the floor, and another gust of wind comes and blows it away. And I was like, is there something about that we're going to find out later on, that something about classic fairy tale, like love will be the thing that enables the curse to be broken?
Yeah.
And so something's trying to stop that happening, stop those moments. I don't know. I might have been just latching onto it, but I just thought it was really like deliberate almost.
Yeah.
There were two sudden gusts of wind that stopped that exact exchange. So I have to pick up a little inconsistency just to go down the pedantic route. I feel like there are moments where the head bowl just disappears altogether from the story. And it's kind of forgotten, and the stuff happens where I'm like, but how? So the first one is where the brothers have transformed from cranes in midair and landed in the sea, and they all wash up on the shore and they're all okay. And then they have this moment, a very touching moment, where they're like, Shiori, you look like our mother. And it's like, well, how do they know? 2/3 of her head's covered in a bowl. Is it like your chin looks like our mother, or what?
So you have your mother's chin.
So there was that, and then there's been a load of references to Shiori locking eyes with people. I'm pretty sure that she can't lock eyes with anyone.
Yeah, I think Lady Bouchon was trying to stare her down at one point. I was like,
She doesn't know. So that's just been a little thing for me where I'm like, consistency wise, we've got to remember she's got a giant bowl on her head.
yeah.
It doesn't seem like a difficult thing to remember.
Other times it does play an effective part, like the relationship between her and Takkan, which I really like, because Takkan, what a dreamboat. This guy's like rugged, kind, like he sings, draws, writes stories, good fighter, strong sense of justice.
Attracted to people with bowls on their head.
Yeah, well, exactly. He's got this bowl fetish that we never saw coming. But it's more the case that he talks about the fact that he can see her dimple when she smiles, and that's how he can tell when she's genuinely smiling rather than just politely smiling. He wants to look at her hands and care for them, even though they're all cut up and stuff. Like, he's paying attention to her even though he can't see her face. Like, they're little ways of showing that he's really attentive to her regardless of her appearance. And so by having other people kind of either mocking her for the bowl or this weird thing where like people just ignore it completely, it is used effectively sometimes to show that Takkan sees beyond the bowl.
We're going to have this sort of classic almost Cinderella type thing where at some point she's going to transform back into the princess and be everything that he's ever dreamed of. But he's also got this romantic idea of what she looks like underneath there. It's always the unknown that's attractive to people. And I think it plays into the fairy tale sort of approach. He is your classic prince, charming. And we've got the mysterious slipper. She's the ugly duckling. And you've got all of these different things that flow through fairy tales. Before we run out of time, we haven't really gone into Ray Karma very much in this episode. And there's this, I found, slightly clumsy sort of dream memory thing. And that night she started to remember. It's like she was thinking about it and then she had a dream and she remembered something that she hadn't previously remembered that was super useful. I was like, that's a handy skill to have. Why don't you just do that all the time?
Dream a bit more.
Yeah.
Come on.
So she has this dream where she's querying Ray Karma like children do, asking why about everything. And Ray Karma kind of inexplicably reveals that she is a snake or something.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, she goes, oh, guess what? I'm a snake. But now you'll forget.
I know I always refer to Austin Powers, like probably multiple times per episode, but there's a little bit of the Mustafa, if you ask me something 3 times, then I have to tell you the truth thing here. It's like she tries a few times to ask her, and she says, oh, there's nothing. And then on the 3rd time, she's like, it's because I'm a snake, all right?
Yeah.
What did you make of that? I guess it's trying to reveal to us something of the nature of Ray Karma.
It's telling us that she's not a dragon. She is some kind of snake being. But
does that make her an enchanter rather than a
has she been
sorceress?
Her use of snakes is the thing that's changing her appearance, maybe?
No, because there's the thing in the earlier part where Seryu's explanation was enchanters, not sorcerers, are like one step removed from being animals. And we've got this enchanter, the wolf, who we think we've seen as a wolf with the golden bracelet. So now I'm thinking she's an enchanter, not a sorceress, in the way that Seryu sort of explains.
She's been given great power through the stolen dragon pearl.
Yeah.
At least now we know that she isn't a dragon because he's like, it reveals it when it's not your own pearl.
We know that this enchanter that's working with the brothers wants the dragon pearl.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of thing about enchanters desiring a dragon pearl.
This is a whole network of enchanters who are just seeking to kind of take over everything, because we're seeing them being mentioned and attached to loads of different characters. This kind of like network of just wizards who are all kind of like, and then we'll take over and magic will rule. Because it's interesting that you have so many of them, even though magic is banned in this kingdom. But I thought it was interesting that, when she wakes up from that dream, and it was clearly the point at which maybe Raikama first enchanted her, or one of the many instances where she was like, all right, let's wipe your memory so you don't know about it anymore. Again, not really explaining why she told her if she knew she was going to wipe her memory anyway. Maybe she told her something else before she removed her memory, and she's kind of like got some of the association. She explained who she was, why she's doing all this, why she's a snake, and that's the bit that memory dream unlocking process hasn't gone through yet.
I was really pleased at that point that Kiki asks the question, she could have easily killed you and your brothers. So maybe there's more to it in terms of why she's decided to use this curse rather than just do that, because she's clearly powerful enough to kill the Emperor and all of you. Which I was like, that's good, because we always have that whole thing in some of these books where it's like, this seems like a really convoluted way to get what you want. And I still think it gives us an opportunity for what you were saying in the previous episode, where there's more complexity to what Raikama's trying to achieve.
I reckon.
I feel like I've changed. I either say Raikama or Raikama, and I think I use both interchangeably. So apologies for anyone listening. That is the same character.
Aren't you listening to the audiobook? Haven't you heard how they pronounce it?
Yeah, I can't remember though. I think it's because I presume because you say it one way, maybe the audiobook says it another way. I think the audiobook says Raikama.
And I'm saying Raikama. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the same person. So I'm sure people have figured that out. It's too late now.
Yeah. We've committed to just saying it wrong. My last thought before we wrap up is, why does Raikama hate Imarinia so much, the moon goddess? You know, because they mentioned how like she had some imagery of her taken down within the palace and all this kind of stuff, and they mentioned rabbits and the moon goddess so many times. This is surely going to have to play a part. Right? Yeah.
Well, it wasn't specifically in relation to the curse, though, was it? It was like just in the castle. So, yeah, that's... Yeah.
But just, is this going to introduce like a prominent god who's going to get involved in the storyline? Because Imarinia is tied to this area, to Fort Iroh, to the Bushan family. Is it going to be some kind of connection that Takkan has or Magari has that is powerful? You know, this connection to the gods, who knows?
Just before we wrap up, now that we've got another 14 chapters through, what do you think we're heading towards?
Like I say, Fort Iroh's not got long left in this story. I think in the next 2-3 chapters, Shiori's going to be on her way back towards her brothers or Gindara. Yeah, we need to be heading towards that confrontation with Raikama. And I think that's where we're going to be, because she's about to finish weaving. Well, start and then finish. I don't think Raikama's going to be defeated at the end of this. I think she's going to flee, and it's going to reveal the big conspiracy that ties the whole trilogy together. Seryu's going to come back and help out, be a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, I reckon.
Okay. See, I'm now starting to lean towards, I know as much as you'll hate this story not being as concluded as you would like by the end of this book. I think we might be spending a bit longer at the Bushan castle and getting to the bottom of what's going on with Takkan and the murderer who is currently among them, and potentially further development of either Takkan putting the pieces together to figure out that Shiori is Shiori.
That's all going to be a reveal at the end, because the magic is so strong. I feel like it's preventing anyone from just connecting that dot.
I don't know. I think we haven't got that much left of this. It just feels like it would be, I guess the beginning of the book was a load of stuff happening really quickly. So I guess it could go in that direction, but it feels like we haven't got enough left to have as much as what needs to happen to get to...
not. I'll be very disappointed. We've got a lot of theories that I'm sure are going to be wrong, but I would love to hear what other people's are, because there's so many options here that I think there'll be some listener out there who's got a much more coherent idea of what could be happening.
Absolutely. And if you do want to let us know what you think, where you think this story's going, what you've enjoyed, what you haven't enjoyed, do get in touch on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, at Escapists Anonymous Pod. Leave us a message, leave us a comment. And if you want to support us, you can leave a review or a rating wherever you listen to podcasts, if it allows you to do that. And also just share this podcast with your friends who might be interested in fantasy books, and invite them to join the Fantasy Fiction Book Club. In the next episode, we will be covering from chapter 29 through to the end of 6 Crimson Cranes. So we will have, hopefully, all of our questions answered, or at least some of those questions answered.
Don't leave us hanging, Elizabeth Lim.
We don't know yet, but we're about to find out. So join us then, and all that's left to say is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.